Now, protect your eye health and inner peace by blocking curious eyes and also the blue light. Wellness starts within the eyes. Anbach Privacy Screen Filters.
In our headlines on this Tuesday, November 26th, here in South Korea, a ceasefire deal between Israel and the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah is taking tangible shape to halt the violence in Lebanon, according to U.S. officials, but uncertainty remains. And the unification ministry here says North Koreans hosted their loyalty oath ceremony on January 8th this year to coincide with Kim Jong-un's birthday as he seeks to bolster his leadership image. Meanwhile, in a posting on social media, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump reaffirms intentions to impose substantial tariffs on U.S. trade partners, including Mexico, Canada and China, on day one of his administration next year. The U.S. says a ceasefire deal to end the fighting between Israel and Hezbollah may soon be sealed, but uncertainty remains as the response to the proposed deal stands mixed. Our foreign affairs correspondent Peunji has the latest.
The United States has said ceasefire talks to end the war in Lebanon are close to reaching an agreement. A State Department spokesperson said in a press briefing on Monday local time that it's pushing as hard as it can to get to a diplomatic resolution, but urged caution on optimism.
Look, we don't believe we have an agreement yet. We believe we're close to an agreement. We believe that we have narrowed the gap significantly, but there are still steps that we need to see taken.
Citing a source familiar with the matter, CNN said that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu signaled his potential approval for a ceasefire with Hezbollah with Israeli officials on Sunday night. Israel's cabinet is reportedly set to vote on the proposed deal on Tuesday. Reuters also reported that U.S. President Joe Biden and French President Emmanuel Macron are expected to announce a ceasefire in Lebanon soon, citing 4 senior Lebanese sources. But obstacles remain as reports that a deal was close were met with a mixed response in Israel. Far-right Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir called the U.S.-backed ceasefire deal a big mistake and said it would be a historic missed opportunity to eradicate Hezbollah. Residents of northern Israel, many of whom have been displaced by the conflict, have also reportedly expressed concerns about the potential deal. Another unresolved issue is that Israeli officials have demanded the freedom to strike Hezbollah as part of any ceasefire deal, in case the Iran-backed militant group violates an emerging agreement. But Hezbollah's leader has said it wants a complete ceasefire and protection of Lebanon's sovereignty. Eyes are now on whether the two sides will be able to reach an agreement to end more than 13 months of fighting that has killed more than 3,000 people in Lebanon. Peunji, Arirang News.
In Italy, back on Monday, top diplomats of South Korea and Ukraine met for talks on the margins of the G7 foreign ministers meeting. The foreign minister Cho Tae-il sat down with his Ukrainian counterpart Andriy Sybiha to touch upon the presence of North Korean troops on the battlefield in support of Russia's invasion. Sybiha also voiced hopes for a visit by a Ukrainian delegation to Seoul in the near future to further address the military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow. Minister Cho, for his part, added hopes for, quote, meaningful talks during the envisioned visit. Meanwhile, North Korea's efforts to play up its leader Kim Jong-un's image and power were evident earlier this year when the regime hosted its loyalty oath ceremony on his birthday. Now, this is according to the Unification Ministry here. Our correspondent Kim Jong-sil reports.
North Korea appears to be continuing to step up efforts to solidify the leadership cult of the regime's leader. South Korea's Ministry of Unification confirmed Tuesday that North Korea held this year's loyalty pledge on January 8th, leader Kim Jong-un's birthday, instead of the usual January 1st. Loyalty pledges, while regionally varied, typically involve residents gathering for a meeting on the party or leader before signing the pledge. The ministry analyzed the shift as part of a deliberate move to elevate Kim's status, marking a break from tradition that occasionally aligned these pledges with the birthdays of Kim Il-sung or Kim Jong-il. The ministry noted North Korea's recent removal of Juche-era references from state media, instead opting for the standard Gregorian calendar. The Juche era is a calendar system tied to Kim Il-sung's birth in 1912. The ministry interprets this shift as Kim distancing his leadership from reliance on the legacy of his predecessors, signaling a stronger push for his own cult of personality. Seoul believes this effort may intensify with potential moves such as declaring Kim's birthday a public holiday or expanding the use of Kim's portraits and badges. On the economic front, North Korea's trade with China has not recovered to pre-pandemic levels. From January to September, bilateral trade reached $1.49 billion, or just 76% of the amount recorded in 2019. Despite a gradual reopening of the economy, North Korea's imports and exports remain sluggish, with sectors such as raw materials for production continuing to dominate trade. The ministry also noted that while North Korea may consider additional troop deployments to Russia, it is more likely to rotate existing forces if the war continues. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
And in yet another show of open animosity, North Korea severed the power line set up by South Korea for the operation of a former joint industrial site. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung has more.
Another move by North Korea to sever inter-Korean ties. Pyongyang has cut part of the power lines to the South Korea-installed transmission towers that supply electricity to the now-closed Kaesong industrial complex. According to the South Korean military, several North Korean soldiers have been detected removing sections of power lines along the Gyeonggi Road since Sunday.
The regime is yet to do anything to the transmission towers. They have piled up the severed high-voltage lines that fell to the ground.
It is speculated that cutting power lines could be part of preparations to get rid of the towers. The transmission towers, the steel pylons, are built at intervals of several hundred meters along the Gyeonggi Line Road, running from just north of the military demarcation line, the area North Korea blew up in mid-October, to the joint industrial park. There are a total of 48 transmission towers from the Munsan substation to the North Korean Peace substation, 33 towers in the south and 15 on the northern side. These transmission facilities, built by the South Korea Electric Power Corporation in 2006, connected the two Koreas and supplied electricity to the Kaesong industrial complex. The power supply was temporarily cut off in February 2016, following North Korea's fourth nuclear test in January of that year. Afterwards, with the thawing of inter-Korean relations, the power supply was partially resumed, but only to be completely halted again in June 2020 after North Korea unilaterally blew up the inter-Korean liaison office in Kaesong. Cutting off the power lines and preparing for the possible demolition of these transmission towers is seen as part of the regime's actions to sever inter-Korean connections since its leader Kim Jong-un declared the two Koreas as hostile nations. This follows the removal of streetlights along roads that run alongside the Gyeonggi and Donghae train lines earlier this year, the removal of the railroads in May, and the demolition of roads in October. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has reaffirmed his intentions to impose substantial tariffs on U.S. trade partners, including Mexico, Canada and China, on the first day of his administration next year. Our Yoon has details.
President-elect Donald Trump has threatened to hit China, Mexico, and Canada with new tariffs on the first day of his presidency. On his social media platform Truth Social, Trump said that as his first of many executive orders on January 20th, he would impose tariffs of 25% on the U.S.'s neighboring countries, Canada and Mexico, until those countries halt the flow of drugs and migrants crossing their borders into the U.S. He also added that he plans to raise existing tariffs by an additional 10% for all goods coming from China until the Chinese government implements measures to tackle the smuggling of drugs, specifically the synthetic opioid fentanyl. Washington estimates that almost 75,000 Americans were killed by fentanyl last year. But as Trump sets out to detail the implementation of his campaign promises, it's unclear how he'll be able to do so, as many goods coming from the U.S. from Mexico and Canada are exempted from tariffs under the terms of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement that entered into force in 2020. According to U.S. Census Bureau data for September 2024 on goods traded, Mexico is the largest trading partner of the U.S., followed by Canada and China. In 2023, more than 83% of exports from Mexico and 75% from Canada went to the U.S. Yoon, Arirang News.
Staying in the U.S., the president-elect's legal battle over election interference may be coming to a close, given a long-standing policy of the Justice Department that prohibits the prosecution of a sitting president. Our Ising-jae explains.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump defeated Kamala Harris during November's presidential elections to return to the Oval Office next January. The election victory may not be his only win, as his return to the White House means he's also set to see his legal issues disappear. This as special counsel Jack Smith has filed motions to drop all federal charges against Trump. The president-elect was first indicted in June 2023 on 37 felony counts related to his mishandling of classified White House documents that were found at his Florida residence. Despite a Florida judge dismissing the case, the special counsel's office sought an appeal. Trump was also indicted in August of that year on charges of attempting to reverse the results of the 2020 elections when he lost to President Joe Biden. The 4 felonies include conspiracy to defraud the U.S., conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of and an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against rights. In a 6-page document submitted to a Washington, D.C. court, Smith included the reason for dropping the charges. He cited the Department of Justice's position that the case should be dismissed before the defendant takes office in accordance with the Constitution. The Department of Justice maintains the policy of not prosecuting a sitting president, viewing such move as interference with presidential duties. In the case of a sitting president, impeachment proceedings would replace indictments if necessary. Reports say Smith and his team will resign once Trump returns to office, but must give a full report on his investigation to the Attorney General before he steps down. Ising-jae, Arirang News.
Back here on the local front, economic prospects among Korean consumers have plunged to their lowest level in over 2 years amid concerns over the trade implications of a second Trump administration. Now, this is according to the Bank of Korea on this Tuesday. Overall, the Composite Consumer Sentiment Index for November fell to 100.7 from 101.7 in October. Now, a reading above 100 does indicate more optimism than pessimism, but pundits remain cautious as they await details of the incoming U.S. administration's trade policy. And President Yoon Suk-yeol on Tuesday vetoed a special probe bill into First Lady Kim Jong-un for the 3rd time. The bill, unilaterally passed by the main opposition party, seeks a separate investigation into alleged stock manipulation by the First Lady before President Yoon was elected, as well as her relationship with an obscure political figure, Myung Tae-gyun. Now, during a cabinet meeting earlier on this Tuesday, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo called the bill unconstitutional. Starting from the wee hours of this Tuesday morning, capital Seoul launched an autonomous bus service for early morning commuters. The service seeks to accommodate early hour workers, including those in cleaning services. The bus offers a 1 round trip from Dobongsan Station Metropolitan Transit Center to Yeongdeungpo Station from 3:30 in the morning, passing through 87 stops, including busy areas like Chongno and Yeouido districts. Up until the second half of 2025, the service is free and all passengers must be seated. No standing passenger is allowed amid safety concerns. Seoul's ancient fortresses may be included in UNESCO's list of World Heritage Sites. According to the Cultural Heritage Administration on this Tuesday, the International Council on Monuments and Sites has acknowledged the fortresses' potential of being recognized as World Heritage Monuments. The fortresses include the Bukhan Sansang Fortress, located behind Gyeongbokgung Palace, and the Hanyang City Wall that connects Seoul's four main gates, and the Tangchun Daesang Fortress. Poetry is emerging as a popular literary interest among the younger generation here in Korea. My colleague Han Da-eun tells us why.
This is a poetry club at a cyber university. Each month, members write and present their own poems in person, exchanging feedback with professors and fellow club members. While poetry was once primarily enjoyed by the older members of society, the interest has now shifted, with younger generations getting more involved.
People today often find it challenging to engage with lengthy texts, so there is growing interest in poetry that delivers humor and insight in a concise format.
Rising interest in poetry among young people is also having an impact on the local publishing industry. One of Korea's largest bookstore chains, Kyobo Book Center, saw sales of poetry books jump by 18% in the first half of this year from last year, with readers in their 20s and 30s leading the trend. Yes24, another major retailer, reported a staggering 122% increase in the proportion of poetry book sales to teenagers during the same period. A newly launched phone service that recites poems attracted nearly 300,000 calls from young poetry enthusiasts.
Unlike novels, poetry lets people hear the entire piece without losing any context, which I believe is a key reason behind the phone service's popularity.
Experts say that poetry has distinct qualities that appeal to young people accustomed to short-form videos and eager to express themselves in unique ways.
I believe young people are especially drawn to poetry because it contains the emotions, imagery, and symbolic expressions that resonate with their preferences, while also providing a way for them to express themselves.
But if poetry is consumed merely for its brief and unique emotional appeal, this trend is unlikely to last. The publishing industry and scholars hope that young people's love for poetry will pave the way for a literary foundation where quality poetry is properly recognized and appreciated. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, new research shows body weight workouts are more effective than cardio workouts in burning fat. Our Cha Yun-kyung shows us how.
Countless YouTube videos and mobile apps are encouraging the use of bodyweight exercises. This form of exercise is becoming popular in South Korea since it does not require any specific equipment and workouts can be done at home. But how effective is bodyweight training? We compared the result of energy consumption during and after 60 minutes of such exercises with cardio. As a result, bodyweight exercise consumed more energy than running while working out. 85% of energy consumption occurred in carbohydrates for bodyweight training. However, it was 73% for running, which is relatively small. Fat burning also occurred more for bodyweight training during the recovery process after exercise. 71% of energy consumption was from fat burning among the total energy consumption, while it was 50% for running. Also, excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, which stands for the amount of energy consumption of our body, lasted for a higher level for bodyweight training than running. This means that bodyweight exercise is more effective to lose weight by consuming more energy and burning more fat after exercise.
Results shows that bodyweight exercise is also great for diets, as much as cardio exercise like running when we compare the same amount of exercise. Furthermore, bodyweight exercise is helpful to burn fat, because fat burning occurs during the recovery process after exercise.
Anyone can easily do the bodyweight training at home. To work out for a long time might not be easy. However, it might be helpful to lose body weight by exercising repeatedly in a short period of time. 차 윤경, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. The results of Sunday's second-round runoff of Uruguay's presidential election have been announced, where Yamandu Orsi of the centre-left Broad Front coalition secured victory after a tight race against centre-right National Party rival Álvaro Delgado. Orsi, a former history teacher and the former mayor of Uruguay's Canelones department, won the runoff with 49.8% of the votes compared to Delgado's 45.9%. The president-elect said in an address to thousands of his supporters that he intends to build a more integrated society. Delgado conceded defeat. 57-year-old Orsi pledged to tackle poverty and crime during his campaign, as well as avoiding tax hikes to lure in businesses and investors to promote faster economic growth. Following 5 years of conservative rule in Uruguay, Orsi's victory marks a return of a centre-left Broad Front party government, which previously ruled the country from 2005 to 2020. A tourist boat capsized off Egypt's Red Sea coast early on Monday morning local time, leaving 16 missing. According to the Red Sea Governorate, the Sea-Story luxury yacht was on a 5-day diving trip carrying 13 crew members and 31 tourists of various nationalities when it sank near the coastal town of Marsa Alam. The Governorate said 28 survivors have been rescued so far, and Egyptian armed forces have joined the rescue efforts. Authorities said it is not yet clear what caused the yacht to sink, but high waves of 4 to 6 meters were forecast in the Red Sea on Sunday and Monday, leading the Egyptian Weather Agency to advise the suspension of all maritime activities. Now to Lithuania, where 1 crew member was killed and 3 others injured when a DHL cargo plane crashed into a house on approach to Vilnius International Airport in the country's capital on Monday morning. According to a statement from DHL, an aircraft of a third-party carrier under contract for DHL made a forced landing about 1 kilometer from Vilnius Airport at around 4:30 a.m. on Monday. Lithuanian authorities said an investigation is underway, adding that terrorism cannot be ruled out. In rugby, South African Pieter-Steph du Toit took home the World Rugby Player of the Year award for the second time on Sunday, while England's Ellie Kildan won the Women's Player of the Year award. 32-year-old du Toit, who previously won in 2019, is the 4th man to be named Rugby Union's top player twice. France's Antoine Dupont and Australian Madison Levy claimed the 7th Player of the Year titles at the same ceremony in Monaco. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
Rain with gusty winds hit most parts of the country today. Heavy rain of up to 100 millimeters is predicted today, 60 on the south coast and 40 in the Seoul metropolitan area. This is quite a lot of rain for the end of November. As wintry blast of air moves south, the rain will turn into snow. The first snow is expected in many inland areas, including Seoul. With preliminary warnings of heavy snow in place, up to 20 centimeters is forecast in Gangwon-do province until Thursday. Snowfall of more than 3 to 8 centimeters is expected in the Seoul metropolitan area as well. Tomorrow, Seoul, Daejeon, and Gyeongju will start off at 1 degree Celsius, Gwangju 3 degrees. Highs in Seoul and Chuncheon will move up to only 3 degrees, Daejeon and Daegu 6 degrees. Temperatures will plummet with rain and snow across the country. We'll see below 0 temperatures from Thursday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session. Do stay with us.
AI, what are some dishes you should try in Korea?
Recommended food to eat in Korea are Korean barbecue, fried chicken, kimchi, kimbap, kukbap.
에이, 이걸로는 부족하지. 진짜 한국에선 어떻게 먹는지 알려줄까?
K-바비큐? 신김치랑 먹어야지.
치킨? 클래식한 치킨부터 한강뷰 치킨까지. 치맥 페스티벌은 처음이지? 김치?
종류만큼 먹는 법도 가지각색.
김밥? 시장에선 이렇게, 산에선 이렇게, 바다에선 이렇게.
국밥? 취향 따라, 입맛 따라. 마무리까지 완벽하게.
이런 한국, 와보지 않고는 모를걸?
날 막는단 break the wall, hit the floor.
session of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Plastic Pollution is underway over in Korea's southern port city of Busan. And all eyes are on whether the talks will lead to a tangible action plan to tackle the alarming repercussions of plastic waste on people and their nature. With details on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Tuesday, November 26th here in capital Seoul. I'm Min San-hee. Korea is playing host to a number of global gatherings this week aimed at addressing plastic pollution and advancing sustainable energy solutions. For more on this, I have Celia Ferretti, correspondent for the French daily La Croix, over in Busan. Celia, welcome back to the program.
Glad to be connected.
I also have Chloe Bognon, a correspondent for French broadcaster France 24 here in the studio. Chloe, it's good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
First, Celia, we'll start with you. Let's begin with some background information about the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Plastic Pollution. What is it? When did it start? Who are the participants? And why is this latest session so important?
Well, it all started 2 years ago in March 2022 in Uruguay. That was the first meeting of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee, the INC, about plastic. The United Nations convened of a need for a treaty negotiation that will be able to solve the issue of plastic. The goal is to make a legally binding treaty that will therefore commit countries to respect their engagement or face a sanction. At the beginning, the idea was mostly focused on microplastic, but with every meeting, the scope grew larger and larger to establish a treaty that can cover all about plastic, from production to waste management. In its current form, the treaty is tackling the issue of waste management, plastic production, but also the protection of marine environments, because most of the plastic waste end up in the water and on our shores. Also, it's looking at ways to implement and finance these changes to make our economies more sustainable. This week in Busan, it's the 5th time the INC is holding its meeting. It's supposed to be the last one. Starting from yesterday, 175 participating countries are hosting negotiations to agree on a treaty that is supposed to be signed on December 1st, if everything goes smoothly.
Right, and before we delve further into the talks that are currently taking place over in Busan, Chloe, what has been shared about the severity of plastic pollution in recent times?
So recently, what we've seen in the recent years, let's say for the different studies, first thing is that production of plastic has doubled since 2000. So that's number from the OCDE, and it's expected to triple by 2060. So that's about production, not pollution itself. But it's important to see that less than 10% of plastic is currently recycled. So that means that about 20 million tons are leaking into the environment, and just as Celio explained, they are going into the sea mostly, but it's just plastic is getting everywhere. And I found a study in April 2024 that's shown that there is a 1-to-1 ratio between production and pollution. So when you produce plastic and you raise the production by 1%, when you raise the production by 1%, the pollution will also raise by 1%. So what they explain, and the way they said it, that was a scientific study, they say that production is pollution when it's regarding plastic. So the study was conducted on 5 years. They kind of gathered plastic from a bit of everywhere in the world, and they looked at that plastic to see where it was coming from, because they wanted to see which brands were responsible for plastic pollution. So what they find out is about 50% of the plastic was non-traceable. So, nothing was written on anything. They couldn't find a brand. But for the rest of the plastic that was collected, 60 multinational brands are responsible for 50% of that amount of plastic. And 6 multinational brands are responsible for a quarter of it. So what they're saying is, we can say that there are brands and multinationals that are the source of a lot of plastic, and that plastic is getting pollution. And now plastic can be found everywhere. They've found some obviously like nanoparticles of plastics in clouds, so deep into the sea, even in human milk breast and human blood. So pollution is getting a bit out of hand and everywhere lately.
Right. Celio, as you mentioned, this fifth session of the UN Plastics Treaty talks looks to be the final platform for a tangible pact on fighting plastic pollution, which is very severe, as Chloe mentioned earlier. That being said, what are the main points of contention as we speak, and what are your prospects of a treaty this time around?
Indeed, as delegates from 175 countries are gathered here in Busan, just a couple of doors away from me, to figure out an international treaty to curb plastic pollution, lingering division casts doubts on whether a final agreement is possible. The first draft of the treaty first mentioned a need to increase recycling effort to better manage plastic waste. According to statistics, only 9% of the plastic in the world is currently recycled, so we can clearly do a better job at this. This point is not so controversial. All the countries present here agree on that statement that there is a need to improve our recycling capabilities. However, that's just a part of the problem. The second part of the treaty tackles with the issue of plastic production that needs to be reduced if we want to reduce plastic pollution. As it was said by an expert during the conference, recycling is good, but if there's a hole in your boat, just scooping the water out is not enough. You need to fix the hole from where the water comes from. Our plastic capabilities cannot deal with the infinite amount of plastic produced. On top of that, plastic is made of oil and already emits greenhouse gases when it's made. As you can imagine, a reduction of plastic production is a threat to the economic interest of all extracting countries, but also producing countries. In the conference, there are really two blocks facing each other: the anti-plastic, led by the European Union, Norway in the lead, that push for a comprehensive plastic reduction treaty, and the not so against plastic, like Saudi Arabia, India, China, that think it would be better for them to only focus on recycling and not limiting their production. So the division can clearly and will certainly be the main obstacle to an agreement by the end of the week.
Right, and amid the background of such division, Chloe, there are some pundits who believe that the incoming Trump administration in the US will be, and I quote, toxic for environmental policy and will doom efforts to end plastic pollution. What exactly do you suppose do they mean, and what are your thoughts?
So it's interesting to see that currently, since August actually, the United States' current position on plastic pollution, they say that they will back plastic production caps in the treaty. So that's what Celio was calling the coalition against plastic. So they are the high ambition coalition. So this is a very important stance from the US because they are one of the largest plastic consumers. And honestly, even in August under the Joe Biden administration, people were already a bit surprised by that stance from the US. So now the fact that Donald Trump was elected is casting a uncertainty on would the US still conduct that line? Will they even reach an agreement? Will they sign the agreement or not? Because we've seen it with the previous term, the previous mandate from Donald Trump. He pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement. It just went out of it. And he has kind of a hatred towards any binding international agreements. So the fact that the US are now taking a very strong stance against plastic pollution, would that be followed under the next mandate? That's not sure. Also because Donald Trump has shown in the past and even in the recent discourse that he's also very pro-US oil and US petrochemical production. So, you know, if you cap the production, they are also going to have to reduce the amount of oil and petrochemical products that can be used. So there is a strong risk. And then the other big risk will be if Donald Trump and the US now go in the side of the not so against plastic coalition, they might go in an alliance with other countries that are producing oil and that are currently mostly trying to downsize the treaty, actually, and that would make that group way stronger because with the weight of the US, and they could be more obstructive on any treaty regarding plastic pollution in the future.
Right. Well then, despite the debate among countries, Celio, over ways to tackle plastic pollution, it appears the public itself, though, does want a plan to dramatically reduce plastic waste. What more can you tell us?
Indeed, it's a worldwide phenomenon. In Korea, hundreds of environmental campaigners marched Saturday in Busan to demand a stronger global commitment to fight plastic waste. About 1,000 people, including a member indigenous group, young people, and NGO were present at the event. In a country that, like Korea, that is reliant on plastic, as the President Yoon said just yesterday, it makes sense that people demand to reduce plastic waste. For example, Korea produces an average of 12 million tons of plastic waste per year, mostly single-use plastic like disposable cups or wrapping. That's more than a double of what a country like France will produce in a year with a similar population. And there is no official statistics on the amount of plastic that Korea is recycling. Most of that plastic ends up somewhere, either in the ground, burnt, or floating on the water. Also, it's quite concerning for the people, and you can really see in the later years, is microplastics. The more we know about it, the more concerning it gets. Still on Korea, it says in a recent study that the average Korean has 2 or 3 times more microplastic in the body than an average American citizen. That is quite concerning because microplastic have lasting effects on human health. This other study showed that on top of accelerating the emergence of cancer, microplastic can reduce fertility for both men and women. So overall, plastic is not only an issue of environment, it's also a health issue. And that's why we can clearly understand why this topic is important for people.
Right, indeed, Celia. I mean, Chloe was just saying that microplastics are now even found in human breast milk as well. Meanwhile, Chloe, while delegates in Busan seek to fight plastic waste, others in Incheon City are promoting wind energy amid concerns over climate change. Could you tell us a bit about the APEC Wind Energy Summit, including, of course, its agenda this year?
Yeah, sure. So this summit is taking place from today to Thursday in Incheon. The theme this year is leading the global race to 3-time renewables with action in the region. So what is 3-time renewables, first of all? So it's a goal that was decided in the COP28. There were more than 120 countries that committed to triple their renewable energy capabilities by 2030. So this summit, what they want to do, they have 2 goals. First of all, will be to accelerate the development of wind energy in the Asia-Pacific region. So that would be either onshore wind turbines or also offshore wind turbines. And they also want to help the country reach this goal of 3-time renewables. So there is a study that was just shown today at the summit, and they explain that for now, in the Asia-Pacific region, if we exclude China, all the other countries are not going to be able to reach this goal of 3-time the renewable energy amount. So they say that there is, through this summit, they want to take action and they want to find ways to develop the wind energy industries. They are giving a few ideas of how they could do that. Main thing will be political commitments from the different countries that are part of the Asia-Pacific regions, and also cooperation on the local supply chains so that they can be less dependent on other countries and they can find a way to produce those wind turbines here in Korea or in the Asia-Pacific regions.
Right, and speaking about such development, Celia, what are the prospects of wind energy development here in South Korea as perhaps compared to its global partners, including, of course, France?
As Korea is trying to be greener in terms of energy sources, windmill farms are considered an option. After all, the country has a long coastline, multiple mountains. It seems fitted for that kind of project. Developing an offshore wind power industry in Korea will boost renewable energy use, help meet global carbon neutrality goals, and also provide economic benefits such as job creation for building all these farms. Interviewed by the Korea Times, Steven Utermolen, CEO of RWE Offshore Wind, a German company, highlighted Korea's favorable condition for offshore wind power. citing its geographic advantage and advanced manufacturing industry. However, he emphasized that a political vision backed by clear and consistent regulatory frameworks that enables renewable energy development is crucial to drive market growth in that sector in Korea. Also, there is a money incentive to go green. The European Union, a major trading partner with Korea, is increasing its demand for goods and services to be produced from renewable energy sources. The EU is putting a fair price on the carbon emitted during the production of goods. So countries like sectors like semiconductor, automotive, electronics, data centers, steelmaking, shipbuilding, and all the heavy industries are rely on carbon emission quite a lot. And it would be interesting to power them through these plants with renewable energy. So if you want to export the products to the EU, it will be less taxed. So if there is a strong legal framework and therefore also a strong political will to do it in Korea, it could be a good place for windmills. Even though it's not the most windy country on earth, it still remains better than average, and it would be a miss to not grasp on this opportunity.
You're right. It would, of course, be a viable, sustainable energy solution for South Korea as well. Chloe, you talked about the COP28 earlier on, that the COP29 took place in Azerbaijan this month with the international community coming together to address climate change. I understand a deal was sealed at the COP29 this time, but deep divisions persist. Could you tell us a bit more?
Yeah, sure. So the COP29 ended last Friday, and it was seen as a bit underwhelmingly. People were not really happy with what happened. So what's interesting to see is the deal that was struck is the Climate Finance Fund is going from $100 billion a year that was given to developing countries, from developed countries. And now it's going to be $300 billion per year. So this is quite a big advancement, like a big upgrade. It was one of the main goals of this COP29. It was build the finance COP, because that's one of the main goals that was to be achieved, was to get the developed countries, the one who are putting money in this fund, to give more money now. So the thing is, it was the first time in 15 years that the fund was reassessed. The problem is that the deal was considered not enough now by the developing countries because they even called it a paltry sum. So that's the India's delegate, Shanti Reina, that said that. Why are those countries not that happy with what can be seen as a triple, like we tripled the amount, so that's quite good. But the truth is, because of climate change, the crisis and the effects of climate change are way stronger. And it has been said that before the COP29, there was a new estimate that said, if you want to be able to help the developing countries face the effects of climate change and help them, better themselves in the renewable field, etc., it was expected to be $500 billion to $1 trillion per year. So when you see this estimate and you realize that we're not getting to that point. So that's why there is so much division, because developed countries feel like they are helping more. Developing countries are saying that it's still not enough, because the effects of climate change are going to get stronger and stronger with time. Also, it's interesting to know that it's in developing countries that the changes has to be made. They are responsible for 75% of the growth in emission of gas, like greenhouse gas, in the past decade. So we need to help them be able to be more green in order for everyone to get better and to try to stay under this 2 degrees, like 1.5 degrees, heat up in the future.
Right. Celia, what were some of your takeaways from the COP29 in Azerbaijan this month?
Well, I agree with most of what Chloe said. It is disappointing, and it doesn't give good hopes for the negotiation in Busan this week. The COP29 agreement was reached with quite a lot of difficulty and the result not up to the challenges. That was the general takeaway of the summit for pundits. Even though a funding of $300 billion was agreed upon to help developing countries to be sustainable, the funding promise for 2035 is too low, too late, and too ambiguous. immediately regretted the representative from Kenya, also his counterpart from Malawi, another developing country in Africa, representing the 45th poorest country on the planet. For his party, denounced an ambitious agreement. The amount proposed is lamentably low, and it is derisory. So also this financial commitment from European countries, the US, Canada, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, is to increase from 100 billion today to at least 300 billion annually. And this country will provide loans to the developing countries, money to adapt to floods, heat waves, droughts, but also invest in low carbon energies instead of developing their economies by burning coal, as Western countries have done for more than a century now. And Western countries, as I mentioned before, were demanding that the list of states responsible for climate finance should be expanded to also include large economies of today, like China, Singapore, and the Gulf countries, which all have become richer since the list was established in 1992. But China has drawn a red line. There's no question of touching this list. They don't want to be included in the financing countries. So in result, the Baku agreement only invites the other countries to provide financial contribution, but this will remain voluntary, and it doesn't seem to be a really big win for this. Any explicit mention of the transition toward the exit from fossil fuel also, which was a main achievement of the last COP28 in Dubai, also disappeared in the finalization of the main text. Overall, it's a painful experience, and yeah, it doesn't give good hopes for today in Busan.
Right, unfortunately, it doesn't, Celio. Chloe, according to a monthly British magazine, Korea ranks among the top 5 in terms of a public that is very much concerned about the consequences of global warming. Do you suppose this particular finding is an indication of how receptible the Korean public would be to tougher government policies on protecting the climate?
Yeah, so this is interesting to see that 94% of the South Koreans say that they think that climate change will pose a threat to South Korea in the next 20 years. So that, as you said, show that the public, like vast majority actually of South Koreans, are aware that climate change will have consequences for them in their daily lives. This is already first a good thing to know that people do realize it already. And yet the South Korean policies on the effect of climate change are for now considered as highly insufficient by the Climate Action Agency, so that's an independent scientific committee. So that's interesting to see that there is room for improvement in the policies that are decided. Could there be more ambitious environmental policies? There is obviously the possibility for that, but there is a cost. For example, 40% of the greenhouse emissions in South Korea are made by the steel industry. So Celio was speaking about that just before. But I mean, steel industry is one of the powerhouse of the industry in the nation. So what should we do? Do we have to, reduce the economical growth in order to get more ecological? This is a hard thing. There is another thing is also the cost. Under the previous administration, the Moon administration, they wanted to go for 100% renewable energies. That's something that has been stopped under this administration because President Yoon said that it was too expensive to develop only renewable energies, and he chose to go more toward the nuclear mix. And it's true that there is this question, who should pay for this renewable mix? Who should pay for all this kind of new greener policies? So this is questions that have to be seen, and as you say, the question is the public ready to get a bigger cost on them in order to try to save the country from the climate change effects? It's interesting to see that there is some individual action that are already taking place, like coffees that are giving a discount if you're bringing your own cup so that you don't take a cup like to take away, places where you got paper straws and things like this. This is not going to change things because it's on a too small scale, but it's interesting to see that it might help people realize that there is action to be taken even in everyday life, and that then there is bigger policies, like more ambitious policies that have also to be taken.
Right, for sure, in the near future, more tangible policies to better address pollution as well as our concerns over climate change. All right, Chloe, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today. And Celia over in Busan, thank you very much for your insights today. Right, well, that is all the time we have for today. Thank you for watching. Do join us again same time tomorrow.